Hello everybody and happy International Bat Weekend. Thank you very much to Nils for inviting us to come in and give a talk. So I'll be one of three of the Southern African speakers. So myself, Helen and Bernard, who you'll be hearing more about as we go. So I'm going to give you a very quick whirlwind tour of Bats Without Borders. But before we get started, I just wanted to acknowledge the Rufford Foundation, who have been instrumental in us setting up as an NGO and also have continued to support us and many other bat conservationists globally. I'm also affiliated to the University of Stirling and collaborate very closely with CBU in Bio in Portugal. So just to give you a little bit of background about myself, so I was actually born in Zambia and then moved to South Africa when I was 3, where I grew up, and I moved to the UK and did a zoology degree at the University of Bristol. I then started to do my PhD at the University of Stirling and the University of Bristol in collaboration with Hugo Rebelo and CBU in Bio in Portugal. And for that, I did my fieldwork in South Africa, Namibia and Botswana. And out of that, I was doing some species distribution modeling, but then doing some fieldwork, particularly in caves. But I realized that actually bats were being killed in a lot of these areas, and we needed to do more than just research. So we set up Bats Without Borders in 2013, and for the last 4 years I've been living in Malawi, but I'm back in Scotland at the minute, and we've been doing quite a bit of work in the last sort of 4 or 5 years, really mostly in Malawi and Zambia. So I'm often asked, why Southern Africa? So obviously it's an incredibly diverse subcontinent, but what many people don't realize is how many bat species we have. So in Southern Africa, there's an estimated 120 plus species. And these are just some examples of some of the beautiful bats that we have. But we also have huge issues with land degradation, and deforestation certainly is a big challenge for us right across Southern Africa. So these are just some examples of some deforestation and, large scale burning that happens as well, sometimes accidental fires. So this picture on the right hand side is a photo taken at Etosha National Park, where there was an accidental fire started and a third of the national park was actually burnt. And one of the big drivers, I think, for Bats Without Borders is I heard a talk by Professor Paul Racy, and actually he said that largely most of Africa is a bat conservation void, and I think that there's so much work that needs to be done, and a lot of people engagement is really key, and capacity strengthening within countries for long-term sustainability to get people trained up. So we do focus on applied research, but capacity strengthening in country is a big area that we are trying very hard with, with resources limited though, but obviously we try as much as we can to work with in-country collaborators and partners and early careers to train them up with new skills. And engagement is a really big area for us now, and certainly with COVID-19, I think we've all realized, how important actually engaging general public as well as actually land managers. And we also do conservation advocacy, so trying to work with governments and other organizations to consider bats. So our vision for Bats Without Borders is that bats and their habitats in Southern Africa are valued, protected and conserved for the well-being of bats, biodiversity, but also people. And our mission is to support research and action that contributes to the conservation of Southern African bats for the benefit of bats, biodiversity and people. So we have a strong focus on people in the work that we do. And I won't go into all of this, but our commitments are to protect biodiversity, to try and restore habitats where possible, to engage with ecologists and researchers and conservationists, but to inspire people within Southern Africa and to empower and to create opportunities and realistic, sustainable livelihood strategies. So this is an area we're striving to. We haven't done very much on it. We're just really small scale livelihood projects, but it's an area we're trying to expand upon. And I'm going to just give you a whirlwind tour of some of our activities that we've been involved with. So it'll be very quick, but if you want any more information, please do get in touch with us. We were helped to organise the first Southern African bat conference in collaboration with Bat Conservation Africa. This was in Cape Town in 2017. And you'll just see Helen on the right-hand side peeking out there, who was helped along the way as well. So we had quite a lot of Bats Without Borders support to organise this conference. We also organised the Namibian Rufford Foundation conference. So these are all Rufford Foundation grantees. So it's bringing people together across Southern Africa who've been awarded funds to do conservation work, and there's some fantastic conservation action. So it's also a great way of getting other conservationists interested in bats too. Another really important area that we work on is, engagement of, so whether that is actually working with, important land managers and actually engaging their children. So this picture of me in Namibia is of actually a farmer's son and his friends looking at a really important maternity roost site in one of their caves. And then Lamek, who worked with Helen in Zambia, has done a lot of engagement in communities when they're doing any trapping in those areas. People are always interested, and they're always, really willing to talk and chat about what they do. We also have a new conservation education program called Classrooms Without Walls. So we have a fantastic cartoonist who does pro bono work for us called Nicola, and this is one of her, this is a Eidolon, the straw-coloured fruit bat, and we've just put him in the Zambian kit to try and engage. There's some young people killing bats in the Copperbelt province, and so we're trying to see different ways that we can engage young people and use a youth panel to try and understand better ways that we can sort of engage people in the area. And this is Helen, who's doing some training. So Helen does a lot of engagement and training in Zambia, and so that's a really important part, is to actually build up those skills and team for her Bats in Zambia project. Another project we were involved with was working in collaboration with the Livingstone Museum in Zambia, and we worked with Harrison Institute as well and CBU in Bio to basically, it was a part of a project that was funded by the EU. It was part of a GBIF grant, and this was to mobilize bat data in Zambia. So we actually finally got out the 2 research assistants who were employed for a year on the project to actually see some live bats, because they've been working quite a lot with museum specimens. And you'll see in the bottom right-hand corner, there's Paul Bates, who is from the Harrison Institute, who's an internationally renowned taxonomist who came over to Zambia to train the team up. We also then took the team, so you can see in the top corner, there's Claire Mateka and then Sandy and Debbie, who were the 2 research assistants. So Claire is the mammologist at the Livingstone Museum, and they came to Zambia to be trained in molecular techniques, but also they did a GIS training course with myself and Hugo, who's pictured there in the top right. Hugo then also came out to Zambia, and we ran a GIS and data mobilization course and species distribution course, Introduction to Species Distribution Modeling, for this fantastic team at the Copperbelt University of lecturers. So we did that, and we also ran another course for the museum staff at Livingstone who didn't work on bats with the rest of the team, so that they would also have some GIS skills. And so this is Sandy and Debbie, who I mentioned, and Debbie, I'm delighted to say, has got a position in at the Department of National Parks and Wildlife in Zambia after her year's project and working on the genetics of zebra. And Sandy has actually moved to the US and is pursuing a master's degree. Another really exciting project that we were involved with was actually doing some training at the internationally renowned Kasanka National Park, and you'll be hearing more about Kasanka coming up. So this project was in collaboration with these 3 Pauls. So Paul Bates from the Harrison Institute, Paul Wabala, who's our Bat Conservation Africa Chair, and from Masai Mara University, and then Paul Howden-Leach, who is from Wildlife Acoustics, who sponsored him to come out. And then you can see there's Helen and Lamek as well. So we had quite a good team for training. So we actually ran training a course for Kasanka staff, so the rangers and guides and their education team, but we also invited some community members too. And the 4-day training course kicked off with Paul showing the team how to run an acoustic training course. So this was actually trying to teach them about insectivorous bats, because they know a lot about the straw-coloured fruit bats, but actually how they can actually engage tourists outside of the fruit bat season. And this is the team that we had. We've also been involved with having the first Malawi students. These 2 students were the first students from Chancellor College in Zomba to actually do bat projects in Malawi. So that was fantastic. We also help international collaborators. So this is the Max Planck Institute coming to Kasanka. So they were putting some tags onto Eidolon. And we had just a fantastic time. So this is Dina Deckman, who was heading up the work, straw-coloured fruit bats, but also they were able to see the tags on and learn a bit more about the ecology of these species. And this is Brighton releasing his first straw-coloured fruit bat, and you can just see the look on his face. He had a fantastic time. So I'm going to shortly hand over to Helen. She's going to give you a little bit of an overview about an exciting project that we've been working with in collaboration with Bat Conservation Africa. And most people would run away and not want to map out all the caves in Africa. But Helen took on the challenge, thanks to the Rufford Foundation and Santander University for funding her internship. So over to Helen. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Helen. I'm working on the Bat Conservation Africa and Bats Without Borders Cave project, funded by a Santander internship and the Rufford Foundation. I'm joined by a team of volunteers. We collect information on caves throughout Africa, starting by mapping out as many as possible using records of cave-dwelling bats. We'll follow this up at some stage with collaborators in country to do ground truthing to understand the status of the caves on the ground. And at the same time, we're doing a literature review looking at what is currently known about African caves and the bats living there, but also studies that have been done on caves across the world and what we can learn from those. We are also following this up by developing guidelines to do rapid ecological assessments so that we can understand the status of caves better in the future.
So we also ran an Introduction to Birds and Bats course for Machuru Rangers who had requested it, which was great. And this was in collaboration with Dr. Tawangi Gawa. So she's one of our scientific advisors for Bats Without Borders. She's also the chair of the Wildlife and Environmental Society of Malawi and a lecturer at the Malawian University of Science and Technology. So in collaboration with MUST and WESM, we were very grateful to get funding from Global Challenges Research Funds, thanks to the University of Stirling, who we collaborated on to run a fantastic workshop bringing together 30 participants to understand the barriers to a career in ecology and conservation. And while we were there, we decided to also plug the sort of supporting women in science and opportunities and understanding the barriers for women in continuing their careers. We will also have helped out with the Global South Bats project. So this was a fantastic new initiative, started with Rodrigo Mendelin and Paul Wabala. And this is bringing together young people from Latin America and Africa and the Caribbean. And yeah, we had a great group of people, and it was just fantastic to see the collaboration, and they continue to work together and support each other. And this is the contingent of the Bat Conservation Africa group, and the three of us were kind of the BCA committee members, and a nice group of Africans from a range of different countries. We had a great group of people, and it was just fantastic to see the collaboration, and they continue to work together and support each other. And this is the contingent of the Bat Conservation Africa group, and the three of us were kind of the BCA committee members, and a nice group of Africans from a range of different countries. So we also do get involved with some research, not as much as we would like, given the sort of funding difficulties, but we have been focusing on forest and cave research. And this is just some fun photos. So Bernard, hearing from shortly, he'll be talking to you more about his work, but he also gets involved in lots of different projects. So this is Helen and I had been scrambling around, getting very, very dirty. But you do get some fantastic gems when you're caving. So this is Cleotis percivali, for any of you who've not been lucky enough to see this bat. It's absolutely stunning. We're looking at sinkholes, caves, as well as mines. More recently, due to limitations with travel and fieldwork, we decided to start a sort of Winged Wednesday webinar series, which has been really successful. That started in March last year. We've had 25 different talks, and they're all available on YouTube if you want to catch up. And you can find out from our website the speakers that are coming up. And I just wanted to end by, thanking our fantastic team of largely volunteers. We have a few interns, but mostly volunteers who really help us to kind of keep the NGO going. Without their help and support, we wouldn't be able to do what we can do. And it's really fantastic to see we actually have people from 16 different countries all coming together to support bat conservation across Southern Africa. And so I'd just like to say thank you very much. And I'm going to hand over to Helen Taylor-Boyd in the Bats in Zambia project, who's been instrumental in a lot of work that we do, and certainly is instrumental in work in Zambia. So thank you very much for your time. Goodbye.
Hi, I'm Helen Taylor-Boyd. As well as volunteering for Bats Without Borders, I coordinate the Bats in Zambia project, which is heavily supported by Bats Without Borders, and also collaborates with various in-country organisations, including Department of National Parks and Wildlife, University of Zambia and Livingstone Museum. The Bats in Zambia project is basically a network of like-minded people interested in bat conservation, with an overall aim to reduce our impact on bat populations within Zambia. We primarily focus on research, but also conduct outreach and training activities. Research that we do is driven by the individuals within the network and also conservation priorities within the country. One of our biggest conservation priorities is human-bat conflict. And one of the other areas of interest that we're focusing on is ecosystem services, mainly in agricultural landscapes. We're also interested in cave and forest habitats, and of course the large migration at Kasanka National Park. We also are building up a records database for people to use in future. Over the last few years, we've definitely seen an increase in the number of calls that we're getting about people being concerned about bats in their houses. Obviously there's the global pandemic, which seems to be causing issues for human-bat conflict, but also we're increasing our social media presence through our Facebook group, which means that more people can find us and find out about what we do. As a result of some of these roost visits that we do, we've had some grounded bats in care, and because of the Bats Without Borders Bat Care Network throughout Southern Africa, we've been able to release quite a few bats of different species, and also been able to give advice to others in the network, the Bat Care Network. Whenever we get the opportunity, we like to share information about bats with as many people as possible. We like to go to schools, universities, organisations, do public walks and talks, share information with government institutions as well. And of course, when anybody is interested in doing a research project on bats or training to become a bat worker and joining the Bats in Zambia network, then we're very, very happy to share information and help each other. I was lucky enough personally to get a lot of information and experience and the benefit of networking through the Bats in Zambia project for my PhD that I'm currently conducting. We've also got Bernard, who's studying for an agricultural management diploma and hopefully going to incorporate bats into some of his research project. And we've had Crispin and Dennis in the past doing a project for their final year at university. And at the moment, we've also been joined by Bouillard, who's studying for a veterinary degree and studying bats in urban landscapes. So for my PhD, I've studied 30 commercial farms across Zambia and looked at activity and species assemblages using acoustic surveys, and also trapped bats to study them in the hand. I've also collected droppings to conduct dietary analysis on and compare to insects that I've trapped within the farm landscapes. I'm looking at how different habitat features using NDVI and other landscape mapping methods may affect species assemblages and activity. And now I'll pass you over to Bernard, who actually started off helping and as a field assistant for my PhD work and is now building up projects of his own. He sent in a few video clips to explain a little bit about what he's been doing with the project and also with Bats Without Borders.
My name is Bernard Kangwa. I'm from Zambia and I'm a student at Natural Resource Development College in Lusaka, here Zambia. And I'm also, I volunteer under Bats in Zambia and Bats Without Borders. So I'll quickly explain to you when I started this bat work. I'll take you back to where I started from. I started in 2017 with Bats in Zambia, and later on I was introduced to Bats Without Borders, and till now I'm still volunteering under these two organizations. So with Bats in Zambia, I've been involved in projects like research, farm research, which we've also been doing farm visits where we get to interact with farmers, and we also talk about the benefits of bats, where we get to share knowledge about these beautiful mammals. So we also do roost visits where we get to visit roosts that have been pointed out, or roosts that are in the roofs. So we get to talk to people and share the knowledge of our bats and also tell us their concerns. Then we get to find a way forward together with them. I've also been involved in with school talks, where we go to schools and talk to them about these beautiful mammals, the bats specifically, and we talk to them about them. We share our knowledge, and they also share their views about bats. Had good news where we've gotten students that are now getting involved with the projects, which is a positive impact. So far so good. We've set up these detectors on different habitats for us to determine the activity of bats at different habitats in different time of the year. I'm also involved in a project where we are coming up with a species profile with Bats Without Borders. I've learned a lot and I've benefited that I've gained experience with working with different people all over Zambia, as well as working with different people from different countries and getting to learn different ideas and different skills from different people, as well as getting good knowledge how bats and other wildlife contribute to the agriculture sector. When I'm up here, the first thing that I'll do is check if there's any information at all in here. So as I've checked this one, it just looks okay, everything is working. We got data, and yeah, so it's a good and positive information. My name is Bernard Kangwa from Zambia. I'm a volunteer for Bats Without Borders and Bats in Zambia project. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bernard, for sending in those video clips. They were absolutely fantastic. Thank you. All it leaves me to say is thank you very much to Bats Without Borders for being so supportive as an organisation, and also thank you very much to the organisers of this event for inviting us to give this brief talk. We've been very, very lucky to work in some fantastic locations, such as Luambe National Park, where there's a new conservation project, and also Kasanka National Park, where the straw-coloured fruit bat migration is. And I understand you're going to hear more about that next.
So I don't know about you, but I thought that was really interesting to hear about all those different projects. I'd heard about the organizations, obviously, but I didn't know they were involved with that many people, which is great, on that bigger range of projects as well. So that is great, and I should really get into the field with them at some point. Okay, as I wrote in the chat, in a minute or two, I will start playing 2 videos, one after each other, obviously, but they were mainly made for children. That doesn't mean that you can't watch them, obviously, but that does mean that if you have kids around, now's a good time to invite them over. So we've kept the clips short because obviously with kids it's easier. So the first video is going to be a book reading. The book reading will be by Emma Reynolds. She's written Amara and the Bats. She's also illustrated it. It's a really very nice book about bat conservation for children. And then after that, she'll be showing us how to draw a bat. So if you have kids around, give them a sheet of paper and a pen or a pencil or whatever. And then after that, it'll be a short video made by Emily Stanford and her husband about bats, just a general introduction to bats, but aimed specifically at children. So yes, we wanted to make this event really for everyone. So not only is it accessible to anyone around the world, but it is also accessible to children. At least this very small section is, and then there will be the same one. So I'll be playing those clips later again today, so that kids from as many places as possible can enjoy the book reading, the drawing along, as well as a short video on bats. So let's kick things off with the book reading and the drawing along.
Hello and a very happy International Bat Night. What an incredible way to celebrate our amazing bats. My name's Emma Reynolds and I'm a children's author and illustrator from Manchester. And I made this book all about bats and bat conservation. It's all about a little girl called Amara who loves bats, but she's really sad to find the bats no longer live in her new town because they're losing their habitat. So she does some research, and inspired by real-life youth activists like Takata Ionise, Greta Thunberg and Dara McAnulty, she rallies her friends and her community to save the bats. So today I'm going to read you some of this book, and then we're going to draw a bat together. Amara and the Bats by Emma Reynolds. Amara really loves bats. When Amara was very small, a bat got trapped in the attic of her old house. Amara asked if she could hold the bat, but her mum and big brother Samir told her they should wait for the wildlife rescue team. They would know how to handle and look after the bat safely. When the wildlife rescue team arrived, they caught the bat carefully and held it very gently in a towel. Amara got to see the bat's fluffy face, beady eyes and delicate wings up close. Some people are afraid of bats, but Amara thought they were so cute. Part of her wished she could keep it as a pet, but Amara knew the bat would be happier out in the wild where it could fly around and be free. Ever since then, Amara has loved bats. Her favourite thing to do is to collect all the bat facts she can find and write them in her notebook. Mum, did you know that bats are nocturnal? That means they're awake at night. They hang upside down like this, and they're the only mammals that can fly. Squeak, squeak! Amara and her family were moving to a new town. She was supposed to be packing her room, but she kept getting distracted by more bat facts. Squeak, squeak! Amara squeaked all around the house. Samir, did you know that bats have such a high-pitched squeak that we can't even hear them? They use echolocation to find their food in the dark. I can hear you, Samir laughed. Amara and her family often watched the bats flying near their old house. She knew that all kinds of bats lived all over the world, so no matter where they lived, she'd always be able to see them. After they moved, Amara couldn't wait to visit the park in her new neighbourhood to see the bats flying around at sundown. Did you know that most bats eat insects or fruit, but some eat fish, frogs and even flowers? They have really long tongues to reach the nectar. They are amazing pollinators. But when Amara and her family got to the park, there were no bats to be found. They asked the park ranger about the bats, but she hadn't seen any in a while. We used to have a few bats nearby years ago, the ranger said sadly, but it's just me working here now, and more of the land is being sold to make room for buildings. Amara felt a sad feeling in her tummy on the way home. She couldn't stop thinking about the bats in their habitat. There was so much that needed fixing. She felt as if the weight of the whole world was crushing down on her. What could she do to help? Amara? Her mum knocked on the door gently. I unpacked the rest of your books, and your new nature magazine arrived. Ah, thanks, Mum, said Amara, still feeling glum. It will feel like home soon, I promise. Her mum placed the magazine and Amara's bat books on the bed and then gave her a hug. Amara opened her magazine and started to read. There was a story about young people organising beach cleanups to clear plastic from the oceans, and another story about a boy teaching people to connect with nature by writing a blog and fighting to protect endangered birds. She found lots of stories and videos online about kids taking action to help animals and the planet. Soon, Amara realised if they could make a difference, so could she. And she had an idea. And that's all I'm going to read from the book for now, but there's lots of facts in the back as well about how you can take action for bats. It's all about how to build your own bat house. There's lots more facts about bats, bat poop, echolocation.
And you can find out more on my website.
Okay, so grab a piece of paper and a pencil or pen and we'll get started. So first we're going to draw a little arch like that. Next, I'm going to draw a really low slope in the middle. And then we're going to draw another one of these on the other side. Next, we're going to draw a really big line, so don't worry if you have to do it in 2 sections. This is just to connect it up. So you might have guessed what we're drawing. Okay, and then we're going to do a big arch like this to form the top of one of the wings. And we're going to do exactly the same on the other side. And then we're going to do 3 arches, so 1, 2, and then connect it at the bottom. And exactly the same on the other side, we're going to do 1, 2, and then connect it here. Now don't worry if it's a bit wonky like mine, it's because I'm drawing at an angle. Then we're going to give a little face, so I like to do 2 little eyes and a little smile. And if you want to, you can give it an open mouth by just adding another line underneath like this, and you can have a little tongue. I'm just going to colour it in as well. And there you have it, your very own cartoon bat. And I'm going to make mine a bit fancy, so feel free to add accessories. And it's going to have a little top hat. And maybe a monocle. It's a fancy bat. And there you go. I hope you had fun reading and drawing along with me today, and I hope you have a fantastic International Bat Night. Bye!
So yeah, I wanted to thank everyone for the kind comments I've been getting in the chat, in my direct messages, by email and everything, to thank me for organizing this. I'm really glad that you're liking it. Yeah, I'm doing this event for you and for the bats. So it's really nice to see that so many of you are enjoying the show we are all putting on today. Obviously, I would like to thank all contributors who have, well, contributed to this event, be it live or by pre-recording videos. Obviously, you can imagine that time-wise, it is a challenge to get everyone on here live. So that's why we have videos. because videos can also allow for people in the field or with limited internet connection to still submit something. Later we'll have things from Peru, and I know Chris would have wanted to be live, but it's just not possible where he is. So even uploading the video took him 8 hours or something. So you can imagine that a live session would be hectic. So let's just give it one more minute. So yeah, if you haven't already, please include in the chat where you are joining us from, because it's interesting to see where you all are. Because at the start, I know there were quite a few Americans. I don't know how many are left, because it is the middle of the night now there. But I'm assuming there's more Europeans who've joined us, probably a few from Asia, Africa. So yeah, just let us know where you're from. Okay, so let's resume with the African session. So earlier, well, half an hour ago, we heard about Zambia and the straw-colored fruit bats. And the Kasanka National Park was mentioned a couple of times. So the video we're going to watch now is made in Kasanka National Park, and you'll learn everything about the park. as you can see, this Kasanka has probably one of the most beautiful wildlife shows on Earth, but unfortunately it is at threat. It is threatened like many other parts of the world. So yeah, and as you saw, like many other organizations, they rely on donations. So as I've said before, this is not a fundraising event, but if you find a project today that you like, please consider supporting it either financially, or if you live nearby, dedicate some of your time to it. Or even if you live a bit further, maybe they would need they would need help with data analysis or things like that, or outreach. Because if you are good at social media, maybe you could help out as well, even if you are on the other side of the planet. So we've done Zambia. Let's now go not too far from there to Malawi.
Hi, my name's Angelina and I'm the Research Manager at African Bat Conservation. So tonight for International Bat Night, you're going to join me and my colleagues on a bat survey here at Kambali Lodge at their banana plantation. So on our bat survey tonight, we'll be using some mist nets and harp traps. So what are you up to there?
We just finished to put up our mist net pole and want to choose the mist net to use.
So when picking where to put up your mist net, a really good thing to look out for is to have trees either side so that your poles can actually blend in to the surroundings around you. And then the other key thing we're looking for is having some kind of canopy cover above us. So now Gabby's walked out her net, she can see where the other pole's going to go. And then what she's doing is opening up the net to check for any tangles. Now the top of the net, you can see here, is a green different colour one. Now there's quite a few ways you can set up a harp trap. Today I'm going to be using a method I prefer when doing it, and when I do it alone. Now first up, you want to get these two pieces and put them together. They're called the hips. Now next we want to take the baffle bar and attach it to our hip. And there's a nice little pin here which you just drop through. There's two holes and then that should slide in to fix that in. After that we want to get, now I'm not sure if it's the right term, but I always call it the arms, and they need to go in the top there. So once we've attached the arms in, so normally, especially if I was doing this in a cave or something, I'd probably keep it at this lower level and have two of us doing it together. Now because what I'm doing this on my own right now, I'm going to just grab two of the legs and attach them from now, and then actually that's going to give the trap some stability. Now that I've attached my legs, my trap is nice and stable, and actually sometimes it's better to get the legs on first than the nice two arm bits. Then we want to get our bit with the strings. And you can see on this side there's two markings. Now that means you've got the side that pokes in. So that bit wants to be on the shorter side where you're stood. And so now what I'm going to do is put my other set of legs on. And then finally, the catch bag. legs, which also gives it a bit of extra security.
I'll just quickly pause here just to explain a tiny bit. So hub traps and mist nets are the most common trapping methods to catch bats. Obviously, not everyone can do that. There are regulations in place. You need permits, things like that, licenses. So if you are interested in doing this, the best way to get started is to join a group who's already been doing this, because there's also a fair bit of a learning curve on, as you can see, on how to put these up, but also on how to handle bats and things like that. So I just wanted to clarify that. While this video is a bit more technical about how these methods work, there are some ground rules of sorts that you have to follow in order to use them ethically, responsibly, legally, all that stuff.
So now we've got our hop trap in position, and again, like with the mist nets, what we're looking for is to try and fill a good space, so then of course it's more hidden from the bats, and specifically their echolocation. The strings here are actually fishing line, and that's a lot thinner, so they can't pick it up as easy, whereas these metal poles here will get picked up by the bats. Now this spot isn't kind of my favourite spot because it is got a bit of gaps either side, so we may lose some bats to that. But hopefully, as they're dodging and diving through here, we'll probably still catch a few. So now we're going to set up our SM4 so that when we release bats, we're able to pick up some echolocation calls. So the SM4 is a really good bat detector made by Wildlife Acoustics, and we always take our batteries out because we don't want to ruin the machine. And then what you do is you've got your two SD cards just slot in here on the side. And there's a little indent here, so if you push that down, then it opens the section where the batteries go. And so what it needs is 4 D-cell batteries. And then you don't need to remove it each time, it can stay put. But this here is like similar to the watch, a 9-volt watch battery, and that's for the internal clock. So we always leave that one inside and just take the D-cells out. And then here on the side at the top you have a button that says external, internal, so you can power onto an external or internal power source. So when we flick it down to internal, that will turn the machine on. But first I'm going to put my mic in. So bat detectors are really cool machines. They enable us to actually hear the sounds that bats make, and it actually converts it into something audible to our ears. Human hearing can actually only reach 20 kilohertz, but these bat detectors can reach up to 384. Now that it's started to record, you can see it's got the flashing light in the front there. So now that our bat detector is set up and ready to go, we're just going to pop the microphone and attach it to the tree here. And it's really important when recording, and this is for, you know, static detectors, is you want to think about good placement, so that of course your microphone is pointing in a good direction without much blockage from stuff, because otherwise you're not going to record many bats. So there we go. So I've got my mic pointing out this way, so that hopefully this evening when we're releasing bats they will go that way.
Hi guys, my name is Molly. I'm the Senior Research Assistant here at African Bat Conservation, and today I'm going to be taking you through some of the kit that we use to collect biometric data. So these here are Pasola scales. We use them to weigh the bats while they're in the bag in grams. So we have a few different types that vary from 10 to 300 grams, and we use different Pasolas depending on which type of bat species that we catch, because some bat species weigh 3 to 4 grams and others can weigh over 200 grams, so you have to have different ones to get an accurate reading. So here we have the calipers that we use to obtain more biometric data from the bats that we catch. So these calipers go down to the millimetre, but also the decimal of the millimetre, so we get a really accurate reading. So we use these, there's the small edge here and also the large edge here. So this edge will be more for reading the length of the forearm, for example, while these small sides will be used to measure the tragus width, tragus length, the thumb width and length, and also the foot width.
First bat of the night. So first I'm measuring the forearm. I do this by opening up the calipers and then measuring from the elbow to the wrist. And it is 38.6. Next I'm going to measure the thumb, which is 5.9. Ear width 7.8. So what we have here is a free-tailed bat. So I'm just going to check the wing, as we can see here. So bats have elongated finger bones and a thumb free at the top there. So I'm just going to check the knuckle joints to see if it's an adult or a juvenile. Subadult, so probably from this year's young. I'm going to turn it around and have a look, and we have, it's a boy bat. So they have white bellies. Now this one's a bit greyish white, so I'm thinking little free-tailed bat. And then they have a darker colour on the back there. And they have really wrinkled lips. So we've just got this bat out of the mist net, and this one here is a Nycteris fabiaca, and you can see it's got really large ears. This is one of my favourite bat species. And so we've checked the wing, and this bat is an adult. So there we go. You want to check both wings, make sure. So this bat's actually got quite a lot of damage. Now they're quite a slow flying species in the clutter, quite a cool shaped tail here. So it actually forms a T.
So here I have a dark-winged lesser house bat. You are feisty over there. Can you see his penis? It's really cool. Oh my god, it's huge! Yeah.
So here we have a banana pipistrelle bat. Then what is quite unique about the banana pipistrelle bats is they have these thumb pads. Can you see them? Yeah?
Yeah.
So that's what they'll use as little almost like pads to be able to cling onto the banana leaves, which is where they get their name. Obviously banana pipistrelle bat.
Yeah.
This is Myotis bocaji. So this bat is a lot more orange in colour, and has the different shaped tragus, typical obviously of the Myotis bats, which is short, long and pointy, and projects.
So bat in bag, Chloe, is 120 grams. And here I have a fruit bat that I'm about to process.
10.4 for the foot length.
One of our fruit bats we get over here. Very pretty. So here we have a Wahlberg's fruit bat, Epimephorus wahlbergi. And what have you got?
An Epimephorus labiatus.
And you can see the size difference with these two bats. So if we turn them this way, much different sizes here.
The labiatus is much smaller
Than the Wahlbergs here. So one of the ways we first were able to tell the difference between these two bats was the forearm. So the labiatus has a much smaller forearm. And then once we established that this one was not a labiatus, what we actually had a look at was the palatal ridges, because the palatal ridges of the Wahlbergs and Crypterus are quite different. So we were able to distinguish that this here is Wahlbergs. I'm going to release this bat.
So we just had a fantastic overview of some of the bats that they catch in Malawi. And then you also had a good overview of the methods used in most places around the world to catch bats, process them, and sort of see what kind of data we collect, as well as it shows you that sometimes bats are quite difficult to identify to species level because the difference can be very subtle. And they can only be, those differences can only be seen and determined when the bats are in the hand, and that is why we need to catch bats to assess their diversity and their population numbers. So I know that a lot of you enjoyed South Korea's contribution with having a lot of kids involved. Well, I've got good news for you, because the next videos, there's 3 short ones. They were made by children as well. So they were made by 3 groups of children. So one from Algeria, one from Tunisia, one from Germany. And they had an exchange program and one of the outcomes of this exchange program are these amazing short bat videos.
خرجت مع والدي إلى حديقة العامة فتنزهنا هناك كثيرا ولعبت في الأرجوحة مع بقية الفتيات ومرحت كثيرا وفجأة رأيت كائنا صغيرا لونه أسود مجروحا وملقى على الأرض. سألت أمي ما هذا الكائن؟ فقالت أمي إنه الخفاش. سألت أمي إذا كان بإمكاننا معالجته، فقالت حسنا سوف نأخذه معنا إلى المنزل. عندما وصلنا إلى المنزل قامت أمي بمعالجة الخفاش وبقيت أراقب طوال الوقت وفجأة بصوت خافت يقول هل تعرفينني؟ من أنت؟ أنا الخفاش من الثدييات. لماذا تنام رأسا على عقب؟ لأن جسمي ضعيف. هل ترى جيدا في الليل؟ أنا لا أستطيع أن أرى، لكنني أستطيع أن أقوم بذبذبات فوق صوتية لتحديد اتجاه طيران أو لمعرفة موقع الفريسة التي سألتهمهم. ما هو دورك في الطبيعة؟ أنا أساعد على تلقيح الأزهار وآكل كثيرا من الحشرات الظاهرة ليلا. وأين تعيش؟ أين تعيش؟ في الكهوف والأشجار والأماكن المعزولة. ولا أعيش في القطب الجنوبي أو الشمالي. واو، أنت حيوان جميل. أنت حيوان جميل جدا. هل تقبلين أن تكوني صديقتي؟ بالتأكيد سوف أكون صديقتك. فتحت النافذة وأطلقت سراح الخفاش. قلت مع السلامة يا صديق الخفاش، وكنت سعيدة بصديقي الجديد.
Just give me a minute. The technology so far has been fairly reliable, but it's acting up lately, so fingers crossed.
Has any one of you ever seen a bat? They are fascinating animals, aren't they? Surely you've heard stories about blood drinking and blind creatures, but are these stories true? Stay with us and find out.
بودانه ببقه بيقول موجات فوق صوتية. موجات فوق صوتية عشان يعرف الأماكن، أو يعرف إزاي يحدد المسار أو إزاي هيتحرك. وكمان هو بيشوف الأشعة فوق البنفسجية والنور الأخضر فاصفر. خفافيش ما يعملوا شيء. فما عبيد يقولوا اللي هما يشربوا الدم، أما هما جست 3 أنواع اللي يشربوا الدم تاع الحيوانات. الآخرين ياكلوا الناموس والحشرات وحشرات آخرين. وشكون يحب شوكولاتة؟ خفافيش يحبوا يعاونوا برشا. الخفافيش يعاونوا باش يعملوا لنا شوكولاتة. هما كان يجيو فوق نبتة اللي نتا كاكاو، بنان، مانجو وبرشا حاجات اخرين. يجيو حاجات في ساقيهم، وكان يكملوا يمشيو ديما يزيدوا يهبطوا حاجات منهم اللي في ساقين لاصق. من هزكم هما صفر هكايا دواد. كان هزكم يمسوا القاع يبداو يعملوا في شجرة صغيرة، نوليو عنا برشا بنان وكاكاو ومانجو وبرشا حاجات أخرين.
The bat plays an important role in the ecosystem. Without the bat, there would be too many insects, like the mosquito. Just one bat can eat over 1 million insects in one summer. Bats are also most likely to eat the bad ones, which is good for the agriculture. So they keep many mosquitoes away while keeping our ecosystem in balance.
Fledermäuse gibt es seit über 50 Millionen Jahren.
الخفاش موجود منذ أكثر من 50 مليون سنة.
In der Schwangerschaft können sie von 1 bis 2 Kinder bekommen.
الخفاش من الثدييات ويلد صغير واحد أو اثنين.
Es gibt über 1000 Arten von Fledermäusen.
يوجد أكثر من 1000 نوع من الخفافيش.
Die Flügelspannweite ist 25 Zentimeter groß.
عرض الجناح عندما يفرده 25 سنتيمتر.
Die Größe ist von 29 mm bis 14 cm.
طول الخفاش يتراوح من 29 ملم إلى 24 سنتيمتر.
Der Lebensraum der Fledermäuse ist weltweit, außer in der Antarktis und in Polarregionen.
يعيش الخفاش في كل مكان في العالم ما عدا المناطق القطبية المتجمدة.
Ihr Winterschlaf dauert 5 Monate lang.
فترة البيات الشتوي يستغرق 5 شهور.
Die Fledermäuse sind nicht aggressiv gegenüber Menschen.
الخفاش ليس عدواني ضد الإنسان.
Die Feinde der Fledermäuse sind Katzen, Greifvögel und Eulen.
أعداء الخفاش هم القطط، الطيور الجارحة والبومة.
Die Nahrung der Fledermäuse sind Insekten.
يتغذى الخفاش على الحشرات.
Wenn du sie sehen möchtest, findest du sie während des Sonnenuntergangs im Wald.
إذا كنت تريد أن ترى الخفاش ابحث عنه أثناء غروب الشمس في الغابة.
Sie können bis zu 30 Jahre alt werden.
الخفاش يعيش حتى 30 سنة. ولأن الخفاش مهم جدا لنا وللبيئة لابد أن نحميه ونحمي الأماكن الموجود فيها، مثل بناء بيوت لهم على الأشجار أو الحفاظ على أماكن تواجدهم أثناء البيات الشتوي وتركهم في أمان وهدوء.
These videos are so sweet, and I agree with one of the comments in the chat saying that it's impressive to see them talk about ultrasound and ultraviolet and things like that. And overall, there's a lot of comments talking about the involvement of children in bat research and bat conservation. And I think, yes, that is a great way to change a lot of people's perspective, because, well, children, well, they talk to their parents, and there are a lot of anecdotes of children changing their parents' minds about bats. So they are a key to bat conservation. That is why we are celebrating them today. And the last one.
الناس شنو يعرفوا عن الخفاش؟
سامحني؟ رايك في الخفاش؟
الخفاش كحيوان ديما نعرفه كباتمان، اما هو نحس لي هو السبب كبير اللي هو جاب الكورونا، خاطر الناس كنت تحكي عليها. والخفاش ما نعرفش علاش، ما نحس لازمنا نقضيو عليه على خاطر موجود شي برشا بلايص.
الخفاش سي دي زانيمو اللي ما يشوفوش بعينيهم ويحسوا بودنيهم.
Mammifère volant qui existe, ça sert à rien, c'est ça.
أنا نشوف فيه هذا الحيوان الخايب مثل هذيك هي الصورة المربوطة به هو الخفاش كأنه خايب.
نعرف مثلا إنه الخفاش فما بلايص يعيش فيها برشا خفاش مع بعضهم، برشا برشا برشا، واللي هي تخليه سورس نتاع ميكروبات، نتاع فيروسات بلوتو. هذاك علاش من جملة ما خموا توا في حكاية الكورونا أنا جاي منه.
Ce sont des mammifères volants qui sont porteurs de rage. Je pense que ce sont des nuisibles par rapport à la population.
الخفاش بكري كنا نعرفوها على أساس نعرفوا باتمان الكل، نعرفوا لي فامبير سورتو، جانا نعرفوا عليه لي فامبير، باش نعرفوا aussi ودركا ريسامون جو كخوا كل نعرفوا على جال كورونا.
هل تعلم أن الخفافيش ليست من القوارض؟ يعني الجرذان، الفئران. يوجد أكثر من 1300 نوع من الخفافيش. أما بالنسبة لهيكلها العظمي يشبه ذلك الموجود عند الثدييات. خفاش لديه أيدي وأقدام ذات أصابع. تتكون أجنحة الخفافيش في الواقع من غشاء جلدي مطاط.
هل تعلم إنه الخفاش يستخدم حاسة الشم باش يتعرف على الاتجاهات ويلقى المكلة متاعو؟ تستخدم الخفافيش باش تلقى الحشرات الموجات الفوق صوتية، والأصوات هذه ما نجموش نسمعوها على خاطر التردد متاعها مرتفع يزيد عن 200 كيلو هرتز. هل تعلم أن الخفاش مصاص دماء يعتمد في أكله على امتصاص دم الحشرات والطيور الصغيرة ولا يقترب بتاتا من دم الإنسان؟ وغالبا يتواجد هذا النوع في أمريكا الوسطى وأمريكا الجنوبية. ولمعلوماتك أيضا فإن الأطباء يصنعون من لعاب الخفافيش عقارا يسمى دراكولي.
تعلم أن الخفاش لا يعيش في الأماكن توجد بها الإنسان، يسكن في الأماكن الخالية مثل جسور، كهوف، بيوت المهجورة وحتى الأشجار الميتة التي تكون في الوسط، وهذا يسمى روستو، وهو يعيش في مجموعات تكون بين الآلاف والملايين. وهناك نوع من أنواع الخفافيش ينام طيلة فصل الشتاء.
للخفافيش أهمية كبيرة لنا، حيث عرف مؤخرا أن الخفافيش لها فوائد، من بينها أنها عدو طبيعي للحشرات التي تطير ليلا وتقوم بتلقيح 500 نوع من النباتات كالموز، التمر، المانجو والتين، وتفرز أيضا سمادا غنيا بالنيتروجين يطلق عليه الجوانو.
تعلمون راهو الخفاش نجمو نمشيو في الليل ونشوفوه، ما يحبش هو الصباح، يحب الليل. شفتوا هذاك نشوفوه ماهوش عصفور، هو بالعكس هو خفاش. إذا كان في وقت المغرب راهو برشا حاجات كحول يطيروا مع بعضهم خاطرو هما خفافيش. احميو الخفاش معايا، احميو الخفاش معايا.
And then some more really sweet and cute contributions from kids who are definitely very keen to protect bats, which is very, very important. Okay, I suggest we get on with the live from South Africa. So we are going to hear from Sharon, who runs a bat rescue in Johannesburg in South Africa.
There you go, you're live.
Hello.
Hi, Nils.
How's it going?
Sorry?
How is it going?
Yeah, it's going very well. Just, of course, you did choose our coldest day of the year. So our bats are not being very cooperative, but we'll do our best.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so just, can I go ahead?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so essentially I work with Friends of Free Wildlife. I'm permitted through Friends of Free Wildlife and also SA Wildlife in Crisis out in Springs area. And I deal mostly with the bats in the eastern side of Joburg. So most of the bats come through to me. Last year we had 97 pups that came in, and then other bats, the moms that had obviously been caught, and some of them unfortunately didn't make it, so we were just left with the pups. And the bats that I have got left are basically the bats that came in too late in the season to get them flight ready to be released before our winter started. So we end up with between 30 and 50 bats every year to overwinter with them. And what we're concentrating on at the moment is trying to get those bats flight ready so that as soon as it warms up in the next week or two, we can start getting them to release before the next influx of baby bats. So Greta here is my right-hand person. I don't know how I would cope without her, especially during baby season when we're feeding bats every 2 hours for 20 hours of the day. So it can get very hectic. So essentially what Greta is busy with now is we've collected bats out of the different enclosures and we keep them nice and warm. If they've eaten well, then we don't worry too much about them. But if we count the worms beforehand and leave the dishes in with them overnight. But if the bats haven't eaten well, then we will warm them up, feed them, make sure that they get watered. And then once she's finished feeding, we will then take them out to the flight tunnels where they will get some flight practice. So I started off about 17 years ago. I joined the bat interest group and have had quite a lot of experience in learning the different species of bats. But I have found out that you really don't get to know everything about bats. I mean, just reading the data list last night to refresh, I have always said that we have 37 species of bats in South Africa. We don't. We have closer to 70. So we're sitting on 65 with 3 still to be described and will be added in the next year or so, I guess, as soon as the work's been done on them. So we're actually a lot more diverse, species diverse in South Africa than even I thought. Not all areas of South Africa are as diverse as that. Our coastal region with about 25, 26 species, and then up near the Kruger Park, Kafuri area is also very diverse at about 20 different species. So I think in one of the earlier videos, they were showing how to do the netting and the harp traps. I've obviously been involved with that for about 17 years, but specifically with bat rehab work, I've only been involved for about 7 years. So thanks very much to Bats KZN, who run some amazing courses, and to Jane from Rewild, I've been on their rehab courses. So, but you learn all the time. Every single bat is different. Every single bat has a personality, and you very quickly learn that some bats will allow breeder to feed them, others don't want to be fed. Some of them, will eat happily in their cages. They'll eat a full worm, but when they come onto the table here with breeders working with them, they will end up wanting to have the viscous from the worm rather than the whole worm. So they can get quite fussy. Just a quick of how we actually take the bats in. So I think you've learned during the day that the bats we need to identify the bats, because it's fairly easy to say it's a fruit bat or it's an insect-eating bat, and they treat it very differently, especially as pups. And sometimes when they're really tiny, I mean, I have had my smallest bat came in at 0.78 grams, so not even 1 gram. It's then quite difficult to ID what kind of insectivorous bats they are, because some of our insectivorous bats are fed slightly different formulas. And quite often I have to WhatsApp our bat interest group and say, help, I'm not quite sure what this is and what to feed it. So it's a learning curve 100% of the time. So with Friends of Free Wildlife, we have an intake form. The form gets filled in for every single bat. Sometimes when it gets a bit hectic, I just write the information down in the book and then transfer it onto the form. And my admin work is not the greatest, unfortunately. Sorry, Mon. Some of the things that I've learned over the years is to, I used to put the vitamin powders and stuff into my mealworms to kind of gut load the mealworm, but at nearly 600 Rand for a tub, it became a little expensive to do it that way. So now essentially what I do is I will take the mealworms out of the big container, put them into a smaller container, which the breeder is working from now, and gut load a small amount of worms rather than my whole colony. We're going to go outside now, and I'm going to just show you our little girls in their flight tunnel. As soon as breeder's ready, she'll bring one of the bats through, and then we'll see if we can try and get it to fly for you. So we can show you what we do with the rehab, with the flight tunnel.
Yeah, amazing. Well, I recognize that.
So when I started, this was the only flight tunnel I had. I very quickly learned that you do need at least two, because you need to keep your males and females separate, especially when you're overwintering. So we also, in South Africa, we don't have a specific size for our flight tunnel. But we try to get our flight tunnel as big as we possibly can. So my bats are spoiled brats. They have a section in here which is heated. So they have a heated area and they have a non-heated area where they can then choose where they want to be. And then we also, I try to keep them on camera so that I can monitor them as late as possible in the evening, just to make sure that there's, as I have had before, little mice coming into getting into the tunnel. So Rita would now collect the mealworms from the night before, and these mealworms were counted at 20 mealworms per bat. Not that they'll eat 20 mealworms, but we do make sure that they've got more than they need. So she'll collect that every day, sort the worms out. The worms that haven't been eaten will go back into the colony. The area that underneath the cage needs to be obviously cleaned on a daily basis. The bats are actually eating quite well at the moment, so there's a lot of guano to deal with daily, but that doesn't always happen. It's not always that bad. Rita now has she has one of the bats that we're going to try and fly. Do you want to go to the big flight tunnel? Okay.
Sharon, someone says that they'd like to live in the flight tunnel.
Yeah, they do. I do keep them in the flight tunnel once they're big enough and they're fully furred. So obviously the babies are kept in the house during baby season, but once they're big enough and once they're overwinter, they are moved into a flight tunnel so that they can fly during the night as and when they want. Most of them are very lazy. Okay, so this was the second flight tunnel I had built, where I made it a lot bigger because I discovered that we needed more space to fly them. And Janine, if you just pan up there, this bat tunnel is actually open. So our bats are allowed to come and go as they please. Unfortunately, they don't leave home as often as I'd like them to. So what Rita's going to do now is she's going to try and get our bats to fly. And this we're doing specifically to get them flight ready for release as soon as it warms up. If you have a look at my floor, I've got sheeting down so that we can actually see the bats and not stand on them. And you'll also notice that the flight tunnel is pretty clear of any plant growth, again, because we don't want to lose a bat while we're working with it. This section of the flight tunnel isn't, the floor isn't secured, and that's how my little mouse got in. He actually dug under the wiring, which my wire goes down about a half a meter to prevent the dogs from digging in, but the mice still managed to get in. So again, this flight tunnel has got a heated area and a non-heated area. The non-heated area tends to be wherever the bat can find space, and then the heated area is inside with a heater behind it. They do have a bat box in here, so we're trying to get them used to using a bat box so that when they do release, they already know what sort of home to find. So this is one of our little yellow house bats. The only one I know the scientific name of is Scotophilus dingani, only because it's such a nice name. And they are starting to fly really well. And fortunately, this little one, we know exactly where he came from, so we can take him back to his colony. And that's quite important that we do take our bats back to their colony, because they are very social animals and they do have family groups. And quite often it's not, I don't have 97 flight tunnels. So it's really difficult to always have your bat able to be taken back to where it's supposed to be. And sometimes they really like flying and sometimes they refuse to fly. So generally how we work out whether this bat is going to be ready for release is if the bat stays on the wing and stays high up. This little one has still got a little bit of practice to do because he's really only making, one length of the flight tunnel. My flight tunnel is about 5 meters, about 3 meters. So it's relatively large, but like this little one that just flew now, he actually did a U-turn and flew back. So he's really showing promise that he's ready to leave home. These little ones came in hairless pups. So they're less than a year old. And we don't.
That's so cute.
I don't have gloves on the other hand. So. We try to use gloves at all times. I'm not the greatest at using gloves, but we have been pre-vaccinated. Some of my bat moms that do help me during baby season don't necessarily get vaccinated because they're only dealing with tiny pups. But once they're fully fed at about 5 to 6 weeks old, then obviously we have to take more care. Although having had them in as tiny pups, we're generally fairly sure that they don't have any diseases that we need to be specifically concerned about. Is my time up here? Because I could go on.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, no, you have time, yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to take you for a quick tour of my temporary cages.
Yeah.
If you don't mind. Whoops.
Yeah, so Sharon, because you can't see the chat, there's loads of people saying that the work you do is awesome, amazing, and variants of that. So yeah, you're getting a lot of praise from the chat.
Thanks very much. So I've got the cage against the garage is my big flight tunnel for the little Steratines. I use this big flight tunnel now mostly for the house bats. We generally only get the Steratines, Rusties, and yellows into care. The other bats aren't from this area in Joburg, so they tend to be like the big fruit bats and stuff tend to go to the rehabbers that are in the Pretoria area or directly to Friends of Free Wildlife. So I've got my first flight tunnel against the garage. Then on the other side of this flight tunnel is a smaller 3 meter by 1.5 meter wide tunnel. It's a smaller tunnel, which at the moment is housing some yellow house bats. So it also goes right through to almost the end of the big flight tunnel. Then I have an old carport that got turned into a bat cage because I find that the yellow house bats you really can't put them together much. If they come in together as pups, they'll survive on their own, but generally they tend to fight with each other. So we've ended up with a few temporary flight tunnels just to house the yellow house bats. My front tents are developed last year because for some reason last year we got in a lot of yellow house bats. I've been very unfortunate. They've only had house bats, 1 or 2 house bats a year. But as I say, last year we ended up with about 14 yellows. So the temporary flight tunnel, which have now become almost permanent because of the winter, are spread around the garden a little. And I think what I'm trying to say is that you don't have to, in order to do your bat rehab work, you can make a plan. It's not always, it has to be a specific thing or a specific shape or a specific area. You can make an area work and you can make a temporary solution for your flight tunnel area. So yeah, I'm very fortunate that I have a biggish yard, but it does become quite expensive. So yeah, it's one of the
I think we might have lost Sharon here.
Oh,
okay. Yeah, we lost you for a minute.
Oh, sorry, it might be my Wi-Fi down this end of the garden.
Yeah. So you said, so are you taking donations at all? Do you have like a website?
All donations go through to Friends of Free Wildlife.
Okay.
Or to SA Wildlife in Crisis, and then they assist me with food and stuff when necessary. Obviously, if I do take a bat in here, directly here, then people do donate, and that's great. But yeah, if they could donate directly to Friends of Free Wildlife and to SA Wildlife in Crisis, those are the two main wildlife rehab centers that I do work with directly.
Okay. Oh, I can see the Batmobile there.
Yeah.
There is a question that came in. Oh, well, Leon has answered it. But the question was, do you release all the pups together, or do you separate them and send them back to where they came from?
Okay, if we can, our first choice is always to take the bat back to where it came from. But as I mentioned earlier, when you have 97 pups, I don't have 97 enclosures, and we've tried several methods of marking them, and it becomes really difficult because you have to mark them pretty much every single day, because as we know, bats are incredibly clean animals, and they're constantly grooming themselves. So what we've tried a few methods of nail polish and food coloring and stuff, and I have yet to find something that's more permanent. So unfortunately, when the little pups come in, I try to keep them in groups, like these ones came from Benoni, or these ones came from Edenvale, or those ones came from, and then try and find a central point to release from the area in which they came from. Mm-hmm. But yes, when we can, we do. The yellows are easy because they tend to be big enough to be able to mark easier. And most of my yellow house bats definitely go back to where they come from. And then the other bats that we get in during the year, whether it be a cat catch or just somebody who's brought in a bat because they're concerned, those bats go back to where they came from. So yes, first choice, take them back where they came from.
Okay. Samantha, who's a a bat rescuer from Southern England, wrote something really nice. So she says, "Well done for all you're doing with all your bats, Sharon. I love the way you're doing all you can for the bats and trying to just add in the extra spaces for any new bats coming in."
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I had a really good time when I visited all your bats in care and things like that. Yeah.
Really I think you were here during baby season, so it was a bit hectic, wasn't it?
I think so, yeah. I mean, most of my world tour was a bit hectic, so was it more hectic? I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, I have really good memories of that, and I'm currently working on the part of my book that's about Africa. So yeah, it's nice to remember all this.
Great.
Okay, so I mean, you still have a few minutes if you want. I can't see any more questions, but I don't know if.
Okay, so let's just go maybe through what we do on intake of the bat.
Yeah.
Because that's quite interesting and quite important if you're wanting to get into bat work that you need to understand. So obviously it starts with the form and taking the details of the person that the bat came from, because obviously we're wanting to make sure that the bat gets back to where it came from. We also then, we know that bats, we can ID bats visually to a point, but we also have to take their weights, and we have to take their forearm measurement. So what's quite important to have is your vernier, which took me ages to learn to read, but I now think I've got it more or less right. So we do the forearm measurement, which is from the wrist to the elbow. And then we note down what we think the species is. We then will write the weight on intake. Should the bat need medical attention, I have an amazing vet from Terrace Road Vets, Dr. Shabir, who will do a lot of work with, he has done a lot of work with my bats. He assists with all my broken bones. So he assists with assessing the bat and then splinting or setting the bone where necessary. So we need the vernier, and then I was very lucky that I got a really good scale. So the bat gets weighed where it goes to 0.00 grams. So we can get a pretty decent weight on the bats. And again, we will quite often work with, when we're working with the bats, we will assess them on a daily basis. Not all of our bats get weighed daily, but the bats that we're concerned about, or bats that have come in injured and are being monitored and being given antibiotics, do need to be weighed daily to make sure that they're getting the right amount of antibiotics, the right amount of subcutaneous liquid, should they be dehydrated. And dehydration is one of the things that kills the bulk of our bats. And then if I can just punt a little bit, baby season is coming up, and bat ambulances are the most important thing, because we're sitting here feeding bats every 2 hours, and we work on quite a big area, up to 100 kilometers at a time, that we sometimes have to drive. And so having somebody who's willing to go and fetch a bat to bring it to us is vital. And our bat ambulance guys do need to know the basics of being able to either get a bat to the local vet so that it can be hydrated, or that they know how to hydrate the bat. So that is quite important, but it's almost like on a daily basis we're getting bat calls. And so many of those bats, when they're 100 or 150 k's away, it's sometimes just impossible to get to them in time. And that's really just, no matter how unimportant the bat, no bat is unimportant, but even if it's, you know, on our common list or it's not an endangered bat, every single one we lose because we haven't been able to get to it in time is devastating.
Okay, so if anyone's in the Joburg area, they should reach out.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
My phone number is available on the Norbig website. On Friends of Free Wildlife will field any call and send it on to me if necessary. Judy has a really good network of ladies that do sometimes go out and fetch bats, or as does Friends of Free Wildlife. But we tend to find that a lot of those rehabbers are really bird people, or, you know, the furry, pretty animals. And I often find that I put a call out and it's usually my daughter who has to head off, or, you know, my works driver, because people just don't seem to be as interested in collecting the bats. I don't know if it's a fear of the bat that's causing it, but yeah, when you look at these tiny little pups with no hair and just how completely dependent on you they are, there's like nothing to be scared of. There's no reason to, you know, hop in your car and go and fetch them. Or, you know, I'm more than willing to give as much education or as much training as necessary so that you can manage that bat for an hour or two while you're bringing it in to either me or Friends of Free Wildlife or Judy or one of the other rehab centers around. Because yeah, getting the bats to help is sometimes really challenging. And because of the area we live in, because of how diverse it is, the number of calls we get for somebody who just doesn't have transport to get to the bat to us can sometimes also be a problem.
Amazing. Well, there's more comments coming in saying that the work you're doing is amazing. And yeah, so thank you, all of you, for all the work you do for the bats, and then also for showing us around the bats.
Pleasure.
Okay, I think we'll move on with The last contributions from Africa. So there are a series of short videos made by Paul Webala, who's been mentioned before by a few people. So he's a well-known bat researcher from Kenya. And there'll be a couple of videos, one from Kenya, one from Rwanda, and maybe a few others. He sent me a whole bunch of clips. We'll see what we end up watching. So I hope you all enjoying the videos and contributions today. It looks like it based on what I can see in the comments. And there's someone's posted a very cute photo on the event page of a baby flying fox watching the live stream with all of us, which is really cute.
My name is Paul Webala, a bat biologist, also a National Geographic explorer. I've been working on bats for the last 15 years in Kenya, in Rwanda, and also in Australia. Now, bats play a very, very important role in the ecosystem. In fact, some are keystone species. Fruit bats like this one, the straw-colored fruit bats in downtown Rwanda. These bats are found in cities, they root in cities. They're found in places like Rwanda, in Nairobi, in Accra, Ghana. They're found in Lagos, Nigeria. They're found in Abidjan, in Cote d'Ivoire. Are very, very important as part of the ecosystem because they disperse thousands of seeds in a single night. Seeds of tropical plants, including fruits that we feed on. And these studies have shown that this species, the so-called fruit bats, Eidolon helvum, in a single night can fly up to 90 kilometers in a single night. And because of that, and because they feed on the wing, they are able to disperse seeds far and wide, traversing areas that have been degraded, areas that have been burned, areas that have been cleared of forests, and they drop those seeds there. So unlike other seed predators, like primates and birds, bats disperse seeds across areas that have been degraded, have been cleared of vegetation, dropping seeds in those areas, and therefore they play very important roles in forest regeneration and revegetating areas that have been cleared of vegetation. Fruit bats pollinate flowers of many tropical plants. Flowers that have co-evolved, flowers that have plants that have co-evolved with bats. Their flowers open in the evening and close in the morning. And they are structured in such a way that they are made in such a way that only bats can pollinate them. For example, the African tree of life, baobab, is known to be highly pollinated, largely pollinated by fruit bats. So, and baobab is referred to as African tree of life because it helps in providing food for many tropical animals, from birds to other animals, squirrels, rodents, rely on baobab as a tree of life. My name is Paul Webala. I'm a National Geographic explorer. We are here at the entrance of Musanze Tourist Cave looking for bats. I've been here with my colleague Julius Nziza. We've been here more than 6 times. Every time we come here, we get 4 or 5 species of bats. Often, but typically when you come here, you get 2 or 3 species. One of which is actually endangered. The Automops harrisoni is actually endangered, and it occurs here. Even last night we got quite a number of them from the cave. This is Musanze Tourist Cave in northern Rwanda. When we go in there, we expect to see Automops Harizonai, and also the sympatric Automops Matienseni, but also Egyptian fruit bat, Rosetas Egyptiacus. In Rwanda, like the rest of Africa, bats are viewed very negatively, but the positive image that Rwanda is trying to portray about bats is very encouraging, because unlike other places, Rwanda has encouraged tourists to come and see this type of cave and also promote bat conservation. So this is actually a first in Africa, because elsewhere bats are viewed very negatively. There's a lot of misinformation about bats, lots of negative attitudes, and this is because of largely because of lots of myths about bats that Juliet and I are trying to demystify here in Rwanda and the rest of East Africa. Of course, we're also doing other things elsewhere in Kenya. We're doing lots of other projects on bats, but Rwanda has kind of like lagged behind in terms of species. People don't know which species are found in Rwanda. So what we are doing with Julius is to be able to further identify and document bats that occur in Rwanda. And this cave is very, very important. This particular cave is especially very important because it houses quite a number of bats, including the endangered Automops Harrisonii, as well as Automops martensiani that were just described the other day. So we're doing this work in this particular cave because it's very, very important, not just for tourism value, but because it contains endangered species of Harrison's large-eared free-tailed bat. National Geographic has been very, very important as a partner and supporter on this project. They are funding this project, and we're exploring the bats of Rwanda. So this is just one of the caves that we're visiting, but there are quite a number of caves around Rwanda and also other areas that bats are roosting across the country. So National Geographic is our partner, and we are National Geographic explorers.
Okay, so these are the two clips that I wanted to show you, but I have a bunch more of showing bats from Tsavo National Park in Kenya. So that's a bat that really doesn't want to leave, apparently. So that's a forearm measurement. It's a very common measurement.
Normally, that light of yours I'm using, you look at those bones and they are not fully joined and delicate at the joints.
So here they're looking at the joints to evaluate the age of the bat.
Adults are fully fused. Okay. So you just look at the through mine. So the very delicate joint. So this is the first digit, the thumb, second digit, third, fourth, fifth. So there are 5 fingers. They are not wings. Joined by a very thin membrane, very thin skin between them. So the word Chiroptera, which is a scientific name for bats, Greek word means hand wing. Hand wing. So the fingers are joined together by a third membrane, a third membrane, very tiny membrane. Yeah. So that's why they are called Chiroptera. Biopsy.
Oh, there's a question about, yes, you're looking at the joints between an adult and a juvenile. So it is a bit difficult to explain, but without examples, and it is also fairly difficult to see sometimes. But essentially, so you're looking at the joints of the fingers, so these essentially. And I believe it's the same case in humans, except it's not translucent, so you can't see anything. But the joints are, they take a while to really become actual bones. And so that means that in the beginning, when the bats are still juveniles, you can see through the joints of the fingers, whereas when they become adults, it's a lot harder to see through. And then there's obviously variation, and so it goes from see-through to completely opaque with obviously gradients. And that allows us to identify the age of a bat. Obviously, there's other things as well, but usually that is the most reliable one. And it works on, as far as I know, every bat on the planet, whereas other criteria are more species specific or sometimes genus specific. Someone says that they've seen microbat wing holes heal in 2 days. There you go. Yes, they, like I said, they heal very quickly, so it's not an issue for the bat. Someone says the wings look very fragile. Well, they are to an extent, but they are. I mean, the bats are capable of flight, so there is a lot of force going onto the wing. So the membrane is actually quite stretchy, and it is quite resistant. But obviously, yeah, if you go in with a wing punch, yes, you will go through. And actually, bats can tear wing membranes in the wild as well, with a branch, with a cactus, whatever. It happens. And earlier today, we had a video where there was a nycteris that had some damage to its wings. And that's how it happens. It's because when bats fly in clutter, they might hit a few branches, a few prickly plants, and so they can hurt themselves, but they heal very quickly. So a wing punch is essentially just a bad cactus wound.